Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Andrew Friedman. He is an author, he's a podcaster. You know him from his acclaimed nonfiction books like Knives at Dawn and Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, which I loved. You know from his podcast, Andrew Talks to Chef, and from numerous cookbooks that you've co-authored. His new book, which is we have so much to talk about. It's called The Dish, The Lives and Labor Behind One Plate of Food. Andrew, hi, welcome.
Thank you.
This book, where to even begin? I guess we'll begin with The Dish. What is The Dish?
So The Dish at the heart of the book is a dry-aged strip loin of beef with tomato and sorrel. And it is almost that simple a dish. There's some things that aren't named in the title, like a red wine reduction and some herbs, but that is the dish.
Right, and it begins and ends its life in the Chicago area. This book came to you in a dream, you said?
It did.
Tell me how you got the dream to follow this plate of food from kind of back and forth between this restaurant and the farms that it originated from.
So I believe it goes back to a writer that some people may know his name, mostly known as someone who did a lot of work for The New Yorker over the years, John McPhee. But he was very famous for taking a subject and just blowing it out into incredible detail. You know, he did a famous piece about a chef that figured prominently in Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, my last book. And I was reading that piece over and over. And he also did a book I loved called Levels of the Game, where he takes a tennis match. One player people won't know, but the other was Arthur Ashe. And he does a point-by-point recounting of the match and uses the player's style and mindset and whatnot to tell their life story throughout the match, right? And I've always loved that book. And I think I did have the idea when I was writing Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, and I honestly just think I had John McPhee on the brain. I'm not comparing myself to John McPhee. I think he's a genius. But this is very much something he might have done. So yeah, I don't know. I spent my life around restaurants and chefs, and I was reading a lot of John McPhee stuff, and I just woke up one day with this idea. I'm gonna write a book told during a dinner service, and during the service, you're going to meet in great detail all the key people who either help cook it, serve it, clean the plates, and then the farmers, the delivery people. And I don't want to say what it is, but the very last line of the book was exactly the last line that I knew it was going to be when I woke up that morning like 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, kind of like the book itself, you then work backwards from that,
yeah.
right? You
yeah.
work backwards from this menu and this very specific place. The book takes place in Chicago, this restaurant called Wherewithal. You know, obviously when we think about Chicago and restaurants now, we think about the Bear.
Yes.
This is one of those kind of peeks behind the scenes. What about this book surprised you? When we're watching these shows like The Bear, what does that show get so right, and what is so different that we don't know about?
I mean, I think that, well, I'm not unique in saying this, that show was probably the best anyone's ever done at putting the life of a restaurant and the personalities of a restaurant on film or on video, whatever they're using. And it's pretty much in line with that. I mean, the restaurant in this book has a real commitment to sourcing locally, getting their stuff from farms that raise or grow what they're raising and growing very ethically. The Bear's not that kind of restaurant per se, although I imagine the place where the main character worked before, the 3-star Michelin restaurant they talk about, probably would have been that kind of a restaurant. But no, I think The Bear got a lot right. I don't think people call each other chef quite as much as they do on that show.
But they do say hands a lot in this
hands,
book. They
yes.
say hands
That's
a lot in this book.
Do they say corner on the, I can't remember.
They don't say corner, but
Yeah.
one of the things I saw a parallel to is it's also about trying to unlearn these really toxic practices and really change this culture. Because the word you use, I think, is kitchen sadism in the book. The sadism that we associate with these great restaurants. And you have these characters who have experienced intense sexism, racism, discrimination, like abuse, actual
harassment, abuse.
Harassment and abuse. This is a story about people who are trying to do it differently. Do you think that that is indicative of where the restaurant community in general is going, or was it unique to this group of people who are trying something different?
I think certainly in this country, I think that's a very widespread thing. I wouldn't say it's universal. I think the motives can be very different. You know, I think the people in this book, and it was very deliberate that I chose a couple at the center of the book, the chef owner couple that run this restaurant, that I knew from mutual acquaintances and friends that they're really ethical people, and they very much are trying to enact change in the industry. In this social media age, in this digital age, I think there are certainly people out there who are just kind of following along out of self-preservation, you know? Those tend to be some of the older chefs, you know, who think the industry's gotten a little soft. But you can't be that way anymore. You know, everyone's got a movie camera in their pocket, you know. There's blogs that are hungry for these stories. We've seen a lot of them come out over the last few years. So I do think it's, I won't say it's universal, but it's very widespread. And, but I do think the motivations can be very different. I think the younger generation very much wants to see a change.
This book is about people and their interconnectedness with food. It's also about the food itself. You talk in the book, to me, one of the most fascinating parts is when you talk about the inconvenient truths of our food and our relationship with it. And there is a scene where you witness an animal being slaughtered.
Yeah, I saw it go from live to carcass.
You've seen a lot in your time, but you had never seen that.
Yeah.
What did you witness, and how does it change you as someone who still consumes meat?
Not as much as I thought it would, because I've seen people speak about the process. There are a lot of people who believe if it skeeves you or makes you uncomfortable to learn about the process or to witness it, you probably should not eat meat, because that's how it got to you. I had never seen it. I'd never seen a video of it. That was actually the one place in the book where I went where no photographs were allowed, for good reason. But I had never, you know, they bring in the book, it's beef that's being served. The day I was able to go to this farm, it was a lamb they were slaughtering, and they bring in this lamb, and they have a 2-prong electric stun gun, and they zap it, and it just drops. I mean, like a knockout punch, just drops. And then, I don't know how much you want me to get into it. I don't want to gross people out. Really? Well, then they flay it, which means not fillet, flay, meaning remove the skin. So they insert an air hose where the hoof basically meets the leg, and they pump it. It inflates almost like a parade float, which facilitates cutting and removing the skin. Excuse me. And then they disembowel it, and it all just comes spilling out. And then it starts, you know, going through the process of being cleaned, being chilled. Temperature is very much something that's controlled all through the process. And then it goes to another, it gets loaded on a truck, almost like most people would probably think of like a garment rack. You know, there are these big racks with these base carcasses on them. They haven't been broken down yet. And it goes on a truck, and it's driven like 2 blocks to their processing facility, and it's butchered, and if need be, it's aged, or sometimes the meat might be ground, whatever they need to do to it. And it's a huge production. You know, I was sort of prepared by Louis John Slagle, who's the head honcho at Slagle Family Farms, because right before, this is in the book, but right before we walk in to the slaughterhouse, he looks over his shoulder and he says, "You're not going to pass out on me, are you?" And, you know, my response was, I've seen animals butchered, which I have, but, you know, that, as I say, that butchery is a Disney movie next to this,
right.
You know, but no, it didn't. A lot of people I saw, you know, I have friends in Chicago, and every night I was during my research trip, I would have dinner with friends or meet them for a drink or something. And when I was telling them about that visit, a lot of people said to me, "Are you a vegetarian now?" No. I mean, I'd never seen it, but I knew it. It wasn't as shocking to me, but it is interesting. Everybody who's read the book, that is one of the first 3 things that comes up, because I don't know. Did you? I don't know. Was it traumatizing to
No,
you? Did it make you not want to have? I don't know if you eat meat. But
I eat meat. I still eat meat. I still love
meat. Did it make
meat.
you not want a burger?
No.
Yeah.
But it made me think about, and this is what I want to ask you about, how do we eat in a way that is responsible? Like, all of us do, I think, need to have that understanding. This book is about that connection that we have to our food, and not just the meat, but the tomatoes, the grapes, the little leaves of sorrel.
Right.
To just have a respect for the fact that there are people who brought this to us, who worked really hard to bring it to us. There are animals whose lives were given up to bring this food to us. How do we incorporate that? We're all busy. I don't have time to like respectfully thank every animal every day, but like, how do we have that kind of consciousness in our shopping, in our eating, and in our restaurant going?
Sure. Well, I think restaurants, I think first of all, it starts with not, I mean, there's always going to be outliers that are just flat out gouging their customers, right? But most restaurants are actually pricing their menus lower than they should be. The rate of price increase for restaurants has gone up much more slowly than the rate of inflation, because there is a fear that customers will have sticker shock and stop coming to your restaurant. And this is why so many restaurants were on the, when the lockdown happened in 2020 and everyone learned about, oh, restaurants operate on like a 2% margin or a 3% margin, and they've been closed for 4 days and they can't make their payroll this week. And that was shocking to a lot of people. I think a lot of that problem starts with the fact that they have kept kicking the can down the road for good reason. But now there's a monster that needs to be slayed. And at some point, I think the Band-Aid of restaurant pricing is going to have to be ripped off. And I think customers who care about the things we're talking about need to be open to that. And the few people I know who did make a major adjustment after COVID, or wherever we are now, late COVID, or I don't know what we're calling this, but it's about 30% increase from their old menu from 2019. That's significant, but that is what it takes to maybe offer health insurance, for the chef owner to not have to rely on all the parties they do in December for their take-home draw, and to know what their personal income is going to look like. It's a myth that you see chefs on magazine covers and websites and television. Most of them don't really make a lucrative living. Even the ones who work in great restaurants. I mean, of course, there are people who do, who are on television and product lines and all that kind of thing. But most of them don't. I'm not saying they're poor, but their year is. I'm a freelancer. Their year, in a way, is like mine. A lot of them don't know until the holiday season what they made for the year. So it starts with pricing, and then I think, going to farmers markets is a good thing. I mean, you talked about time. I understand that, and I certainly relate to it. But I think there are just certain habits that could be shifted that wouldn't necessarily take more time. In my case, the farmers market that comes to my neighborhood is actually closer to my apartment than the local grocery store. So if I can just make a point of remembering when it's there, it's actually more convenient for me to shop there, and it's probably a little less expensive because you're buying directly from the people who grew it. But I think that kind of thing goes a long way. Buy it, and you can take it as far as you want. Buying things that are organic. Everyone in this book, in their own way, was very respectful of the environment. Louis John, the meat purveyor, was very honest with me. They became certified organic as a business decision because it wasn't that hard to do, and they could charge significantly more for the product. But a couple of the farmers are basically conservationists. They make room on their property for, where birds can hang out. They leave things growing that they have no use for, just for the habitat. And but all of that takes land, takes time, takes employees, and it's money. I mean, I think that's a big piece of the answer, is being open to the cost.
And looking at a long view rather than what we always love to do in this country is the short view. I want to ask you one more thing, because you say this in the book that everybody has a different answer to, or a different definition of sustainable. Mm-hmm. And it's a word that we love to throw around, right? But I want to know, what does it mean to you? And what is good, sustainable practices for us, like I said, as consumers, And as restaurateurs or whoever we may be, or just people who want to read your book, what does it mean to be sustainable?
I mean, it's funny, I don't know if people know this, there is no actual official, there is a definition of organic, right? A lot of these terms, buzzwords in the food world have definitions. There is no definition of sustainable. That's why if you ask 10 people, you may be the first person who's ever asked my humble opinion. For me, it's you know, maybe because I'm a writer, I take a literal meaning. You know, is this something that can be sustained? So I learned a ton. I don't, just so people know, I don't go to town on this subject because it would, I think, be boring for a lot of people. But I learned a lot about soil science in this book and what, you know, certain pesticides and other things that people use to make the growing process easier, what they do to the soil, and then what that does to the land overall. And it's making the land infertile, basically, and that's what when we talk about regenerative farming. So I think it's practices that, if taken to their logical conclusion, will result in not being able to do something anymore. You know, and that could be growing, that could be how we treat our water in the, you know, where the fish come from. It can also be, you know, how we treat our employees, because, you know, you could say the old model of the restaurant industry was unsustainable. You know, it lasted over 100 years the way it was, but you know, it's probably changed more in the last 10 than it did over the 100 years before that, you know? And to me, that you could call that sustainable, you know, but I take a literal view of it.
Easy, like it's the Occam's razor of answers, right?
Right, exactly,
Exactly.
Exactly.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. I love this book, and it also, I recently read Braiding Sweetgrass, and it really felt like a companion piece to that, because it is about that kind of sustainability and about really living in harmony with the food that we eat, rather than seeing it as something just to be consumed and disposed of. It's such a great book. It's called The Dish. Andrew Friedman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.